Welcome, everyone. My name is Mary Lee Polly. I'm the mayor of Issaquah, and we're going to start tonight's Old Town neighborhood meeting. I see that there are a lot of folks who don't have their camera on. I will tell you that council, myself, and the staff are desperate to see faces, so please feel free to put your video on. It's nice to see some familiar faces in the crowd too. And also I'm seeing some names that I don't know, so that's great. If you are familiar with online meeting formats, there is a chat function that is located at the lower right-hand corner of your screen. You can click on that, and I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to introduce myself and say hi. It's there. Speak and first. So if you'd like to introduce yourself to the others that are here on the meeting, please go ahead and do that. And I have some council members here who can throw their name in there as well. That would be awesome. I'm really grateful that while we are staying at home and staying healthy, we do have access through technology to still be able to have us connect in real time and to still host community meetings. This is probably one of the bigger ones that we pulled together since COVID started. It definitely is not the same as an in-person gathering, and it feels a little weird when you can't mill around and chat with your neighbors. But for the next little while we're under the governor's orders and while we're knocking this pandemic down, this is a format that we can use in lieu of. So welcome to it. If you haven't tried it before, I'd love to get your feedback on it as well. So before I cover a few city topics, I'd like to introduce several people who are joining me tonight. I have, and maybe you want to, Autumn, are they able to flip on their mics and say hi for just a second?
Yes.
Okay. Deputy City Council President Chris Ray, do you want to say hi?
Hi, thanks for having me. I am Chris Ray. I live in Tallis, so I'm sort of an outsider to the Old Town. So funny, good to get some new perspectives. So thanks for being here and thanks for having me.
And thank you for coming, Deputy President. City Council Member Barb DiMichele, do you want to say hi?
Thanks, Mayor Polly. Barb DiMichele. I live on Front Street. I've lived in downtown Issaquah for about 35 years with a very short time when I lived up on the plateau in Sammamish, but I came right back.
Awesome. So, good choice.
Yes, it was a good choice.
And Councilmember Goodman, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, I'm Stacy Goodman. I live in Issaquah Highlands. I've lived up in Issaquah Highlands since 2005, but I work in Old Town. I work at 6th and Sunset and have since 2009. So thanks everybody for showing up. Happy to be here.
I'm glad that you're here. I also have a lot of staff here this evening, and a couple of them will be speaking and others are just here in case there are questions. I have Lucy Sloman, who is the Land Development Manager for the city. I have the Assistant to the City Administrator, Autumn Monahan. She leads our communications team and our neighborhood engagement program, and she's going to monitor the chat for me this evening, looking for comments and questions. I have Kristen Leeson, who'll be one of our presenters tonight. She's a senior planner. John Mortensen is with us. He's the Transportation Engineering Manager. And our other presenter this evening is Matt Ellis, and he is a senior engineer with Public Works. So before we begin, I'm going to go over just a few WebEx highlights. I want to review the logistics. Whether you have called in or you're joining us online, everyone should be muted at this time. If someone is not on video, you will see their name or initials, and on the lower right corner, you can see and use the chat feature. You can also indicate here if you have a question. At any point in time, throw your question in there, and Autumn is going to be monitoring those. We are scheduled to go through to 7:30 p.m. tonight, and if we don't get to all of your questions that you've asked, we will definitely be following up to make sure that we share the answers with everyone. And we are recording the meeting because we want to be able to share it with those who couldn't join us tonight. So wanted to take this opportunity tonight to provide some Newsy City updates, as well as to provide some information on some Old Town projects. I apologize up front if it seems like a lot of my team talking, but we really wanted to get as much information out to you as we could. ask your questions in the chat, and we will take a break after each of the 2 items to address as many questions as we can tonight. And if you have a question on a different topic, something that I didn't mention, or the 2 staff presentations, feel free to throw that in there as well. Any topic is open. Our agenda tonight includes an update on COVID-19 vaccines, some workplace items from 2021 that may be of interest for Old Town residents. These are new codes and standards for the residential areas of Old Town, and an update on our traffic calming measures in the area. So to start off, I know top of mind at most of the community right now is COVID-19 and vaccines. So to ensure safe, equitable, and timely vaccinations in Issaquah, I recently formed the Issaquah Vaccine Community Partnership, which brings together a variety of organizations, including the City of Issaquah, Swedish Hospital in Issaquah, Eastside Fire and Rescue, the Issaquah School District, the City of Sammamish, Costco, and the Greater Issaquah Chamber of Commerce, and more. Currently, there is not enough vaccine available to meet demand, and when that changes, I want to make sure that Issaquah and the East Side is ready. So as a team, we are coordinating on possible vaccine distribution sites and the funding that's needed to support these efforts, and planning for volunteer recruitment. Meanwhile, we are focused on protecting our most vulnerable. For example, Eastside Fire and Rescue is using a limited supply of vaccine to offer mobile vaccination clinics to adult family homes. And we're really excited that they're able to start this work tomorrow. So that's a kickoff of the program. Older adults in Washington state that are 65 and older are now eligible to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. And people who are 50 and older who live in multi-generational households are also eligible if they meet certain conditions. So if you are currently eligible, please go to issaquahwa.gov/vaccine to learn about how to schedule an appointment. And that being said, due to the limited supply of vaccine, not everyone will be able to access the vaccine right away. Access will improve as the supply chain widens and providers in King County receive more doses. And very soon, when we have more information, we will be sure to share it with the entire community. During COVID, we have tried to be creative in finding new opportunities outside, since our opportunities inside and with others are fairly limited. So we started something called a dog park tour last fall. I have a goal. I know the community has a goal to have a permanent option, and right now we're looking at a site in Tibbetts Valley Park. But this year, before we can move along with that other project, we've decided that we will do a dog park tour and take a dog park to different areas in town. So we first set it up at the Pickering Barn, and yesterday it moved to Squaw Valley Park, south of town. So if you live in Old Town and you head down Issaquah Hobart Road, you probably know where this park is, because it's sort of the end of Issaquah. It's where you cross over into King County. And from June to October, it will be located in Old Town at the Issaquah Community Center. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, I believe we have some pictures and information online about it, but it's been really fun to safely gather at a distance and talk to people and play with the dogs. I've been able to go once, and I'm hoping to make it to all 3 locations. Another project close to the neighborhood I want to talk about is called the 3 Trails Crossing, where Rainier Boulevard and Juniper and Gilman all come together. That intersection is the joining up of 2 parts of the Rainier Trail and the East Lake Sammamish Trail. And for years, the crossing for that trail has been located slightly to the west. We've had a project on the books with a developer who's built Gilman Lofts to move that light and crossing to put that trail connection back together. So we're pretty excited that that is going to be coming to a close, and that light will be opening up in the winter at some point. Another project that the city is working on this year is downtown streetscape. The city council in the fall approved to spend $300,000 this year to implement the next phase of the downtown streetscape concept plan. The plan was adopted in 2017. It focuses on a well-designed Front Street to better serve residents and visitors. So this spring, we will implement two components of that project. One is called Alder Festival Street, and the other one is the construction of some parklets. Parklets are social areas that are created adjacent to the sidewalk and next to businesses. And I think there's a picture of an example one from another town. Parklets are something we're starting to see pop up all over due to COVID as a way to expand outdoor dining and outdoor seating areas. So thank you to the City Council for providing some money for us to invest in that this year. We are hosting a downtown stakeholder meeting on February 4th. For those who would like to learn more information, you can look at the city's website calendar to register, or you can just email ed@issaquahwa.gov. On February 8th, there is a tree next to Jack's restaurant at the corner of Front and Sunset that has been diseased and decaying for a while. We're going to be taking that tree out. It has been signed for a few weeks, but it's also been rainy, so I'm not sure how many people were actually able to walk by that corner. But we will be closing some of the sidewalks for a period of time just to ensure it's a safe condition. And they're also going to do, our crews are going to do a little bit of thinning on some limbs from Maple Street, the maple trees in the park. We want to make sure that we maintain a healthy urban forest as the city plans to plant thousands of trees within its park system this year. And next, what I'm going to do is hand it over to our first presenter, which is Kristen Leeson, our senior planner, and she is going to cover the new codes and standards that were recently adopted for residential development in portions of Old Town. Kristen.
Hi, good evening. I'm Kristen Leeson. I'm glad you all are here tonight. I'm going to run through this as quickly as I can while still providing you all with enough information to be able to ask questions. So as the mayor said, we're going to talk about code amendments and standards. So this started way back when with the Old Town plan when it was updated in 2018. And the plan included not only policies and goals, but also something that we don't usually do, it included an action program. So we are in the middle of implementing that. And so I'm going to go over some of the action items that we have implemented so far. So as I mentioned, this started a while ago with task force recommendations, primarily on Front Street and Sunset. Following that, we had 4 open houses for the plan, and then an online survey with many responses. We had about 6 planning policy commissions and 7 council meetings to come up with the plan. So most of what we are implementing now came from those meetings. So our code amendments, first were height reductions. These were adopted back in July of this year, and they apply to both new development and redevelopment. So if you don't meet this now, that's okay. But in the cultural and business district and the multifamily and high district on East Sunset Way, east of Front, the max height is now 40 feet or 3 stories, whichever is lower. And then in this multifamily medium is the same. It's a striped area off to the west, which is hard to see. And then the single family duplex area, the maximum height is now 25 feet or 2 stories, whichever is lower. Another amendment that we made is that everything that you see in here in red is within the cultural and business district, and it's on Front Street. It has an address on Front Street. And when those redevelop, they are required to have ground floor commercial. On East Sunset Way, east of Front Street, this is the multifamily high district, and they are now allowed to have small scale standalone retail, but it can't exceed 4,000 square feet. And there's a lot of existing retail that is there, but this brings it into conformance and allows for a little bit more. The task force in 2015 asked for more retail along the street, so hopefully we'll see some. Everything that's a little bit hard to see, but the properties that are sort of a red hashed parcels, those are called receiving sites. And what those could have done was receive future higher density development as part of our transfer of development rights program. And we understood that the residents and property owners in Old Town didn't want more density. So we actually removed those from Old Town so that that density is not allowed, that additional density is not allowed to come into Old Town anymore. So those were the code amendments that we did. Then we moved on to our architectural standards for single family duplex. We found out during our process that people really wanted to protect the character of Old Town, not only the commercial, but the residential as well. So we were asked to develop architectural standards for all structures in single family duplex. These were just adopted last night. So they are brand new. They don't become effective until February 9th, but I'll tell you in the end where you can see them. So our timeline for these, we started these in September of 2018 and then held a walk audit and workshop in January of 2020. It was raining and it was cold, but we had a really good turnout of people. And then we shared it with our Planning Policy Commission and Development Commission and Council a few times. We had a public hearing in December and it was adopted, like I said, last night. It was very exciting. So the goal in here was to, as I said, was to preserve residential neighborhoods. It was the scale and character. And we were directed to adopt architectural standards and update our development standards, and which is what I just went through. And the area where it applies is this single family duplex zone. So it's any structure located in this zone. And it's everything that you see that's kind of in the mustardy gold color here. It's the original township and considered to be some of the oldest buildings, the oldest neighborhoods in Issaquah. Just like the code, these standards apply to new development, significant redevelopment, which would be a large addition to a house, so a change in floor plan or an additional story on your house. It also applies to accessory dwelling units, but only in regards to paint colors, which must be similar or consistent with the color of the house.
Kristen, can you explain, this is the mayor, can you explain what an accessory dwelling unit is?
Yes, an accessory dwelling unit, it's also known as a mother-in-law apartment. And sometimes they're over garages, sometimes they are in basements, but they're about 1,000 square feet maximum. And it's a place that can be used for, it's a house, it's an apartment. It has a kitchen, it has a bathroom, it has everything that you need for living, and it can be used for additional income for property owners as well. So the first topic that we covered in the architectural standards is building mass and scale. And so what we heard was don't regulate the style. Don't make everything be a craftsman. Don't make everything be ranch. We want to be able to keep our eclectic character in Old Town. But people did not want big boxes. They wanted things to be broken up so that there's some character involved in that. So these are some examples. So what we said, we want the buildings to be consistent with the existing scale and character, size and shape, want to avoid the big boxes and require things that are thoughtful and that they're broken up, where you might have a front porch or some interest on the street side of things. Another topic, the second one, is roof design. So the Planning Policy Commission, the Development Commission, and the community really wanted to prohibit flat roofs. And the council said, I don't think so. We want to maybe allow flat roofs as long as maybe they're green roofs or rooftop decks. So that's what we wound up doing. You can't have an entire flat roof. Only 50% of it can be flat unless you do a green roof or a rooftop deck. It's usable space. And so we want to ensure that the roofs are complementary to the actual style and architecture of the building itself. Just like the building itself, we don't want huge, uninterrupted expanses of roof. We want that broken up too. So again, you have an interesting streetscape. Building materials and color. We heard lots of different things for this topic. So the public said what's most important is appearance and durability, but we want it to be cost effective and practical. We do not want the cost of remodeling our house to make it undoable. The commissioners said, we want some more guidance regarding what is appropriate and inappropriate. And the council said, no, don't focus on the style. We'll worry about that citywide. We just want to make sure it's durable. So again, that's what we did. We're going to address citywide appropriateness later on. Regarding materials and color, we wanted to add to the richness and vibrancy, create visual interest, create a sense of human scale by highlighting architectural features. There's some really cool architectural pieces in Old Town. Complement a building's overall architectural style and composition. And people get scared sometimes when they hear about colors. So I want just pretty much anything goes, I got to tell you. Not more than 3 colors on the body of the house. Trim colors don't count towards your 3 colors, so you can still do that. It's kind of hard to tell on here, but you can go all the way up to the number 14. Anything above the number 14 can only be used on doors, but those are some pretty bright colors. That's, more the neon green or the fuchsia thing. And the same thing goes for materials. No more than 3 materials, but natural colors don't count. So it's pretty open. There are very few things that can't be done here. Front porches, doors, and windows. I love this one because what we heard is required doors and porches, at least 1 door and 1 window to face the street. And so that's what we did. We weren't too prescriptive. So what we really wanted to do, though, is make sure that there's a human-oriented design that is human scale, that you have a lively and active streetscape, and that you provide weather protection for people who are coming in and out of your house on our rainy many months of the year. Doors need to face the street. There are duplexes that are allowed. So if a duplex door is in the back, that's fine. If the entry is in the back, that's fine. You just have to have a sidewalk or a walkway going from the street or the sidewalk to the door. Front yards and fences don't regulate setbacks based on the street. In other words, if some houses are at 5 feet from the sidewalk and some are 20 feet from the sidewalk, but most of them are at 10. Don't make everybody be at 10. It's okay if there's a little variation there. Make sure that there's usable space in the front yards. Prohibit front yards that are completely concreted over. So a lot of people like to use it as a parking lot, and then require a walkway from the street to the front door. So that's what we did. You need to create active front yards. You can have part of that. Maybe you have a bocce ball court in the front. That's okay. It just can't take up the whole thing. And then natural elements need to be included as well. Driveways and garages. If there's an alley, then the garage and the driveway must be accessed from the alley. When there's not an alley, the garage can't be the first thing that you see, essentially. It has to be a human experience that's prioritized, not the car. These are examples of what can and can't be done. You just don't want your garage out in front of the house. You can put it behind the house. You can have it attached. It just has to be set back a little bit. And that's it. You just want to make sure that you see the person before the car. So those are basically what's included in the standards. So you can see this. I believe they've been posted. The land use code, you can find it on, I always say bit.ly, bit.ly, Old Town Code, or the on issaquah.gov/codes plans. That's all I have. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Kristen. I know Autumn is monitoring the chat, and there are a couple of questions related to this topic. So maybe Autumn can run through them and give you an opportunity to weigh in on them.
Yeah.
Provide some background too.
I'll ask the questions related to codes and standards first. So the first one is, why is Clark and Croston not included in these standards? And that was from Nancy.
So you have to look and see what they're zoned. I think that they're zoned single family small lots. And if that's the case, it's come up and we've had that question a few times. We were just initially looking at the oldest part of town. We can always follow up, if that's something that people really want to do, maybe we can.
Kristen, could you pull that figure back up? Because for those that don't live down there, they may be interested in what Nancy's talking about.
We had a similar question from Michael. Has the city considered expanding these building requirements beyond Old Town?
Go the other way. Sorry. Back.
That one.
One more. There you go. Right there.
The other question from Michael is, has the city considered expanding these building requirements beyond Old Town to incorporate more of the downtown area? Okay, so first question, we were just looking at single family duplexes. Doing residential architectural standards it's a whole new world for us. It's something we haven't done before. So we needed to stay within this area. This was the designated one. It's not impossible that they could be expanded. We do have existing design standards for the cultural and business district and multifamily, high and multifamily medium that are already out there. Our plan was to update those this year, but it just became more involved than we thought it would be, and we wanted more public comments. So we're going to postpone that a little bit and update those later.
So Kristen, I'm going to get you to break this into a couple of buckets. The single family duplex is what's shown in gold. You just talked about multifamily and the cultural and business district. Those would be the gray areas along Sunset and the gray areas along Front Street. And then are there other types of residential construction in Old Town as well?
So the culture, and even go further west along the creek, and that's where the multifamily medium is. So just like you said, along Front Street, along Sunset, and then a little further west along the creek. That's what the existing design standards already covered.
So you've had you've had two projects in the works then, the single family duplex and the cultural and business district. And I guess this is a great question of, do we want to look at other zoning in there in other areas? And I guess the answer would be, we haven't gotten that far yet. But it sounds like there might be a desire to do that. And that's fun. That's exciting.
Okay.
All right, our next question's from Linda. Is there a floor or height limit for new ADUs?
There is. The height limit for all of single family duplex is 25 feet or 2 stories, whichever is lower.
And then that was it for codes and standards, but there are a few other questions that came in, Mayor Polly, during your initial remarks.
Sure.
One was, what will be planted to replace the tree by Jack's? And I can take a stab at that if you want.
Sure, go ahead. Okay,
because I asked the same question of our Parks Director. So there is a master planning process for several park areas that will be restarting. We did a little bit of work pre-COVID, and we hope to kind of reinvigorate that work in the third quarter of this year. And one of those master planning areas is around Pedestrian Park and Memorial Field. And so we're waiting to do that master planning process, which will also help inform landscaping and what goes where. But there are definitely plans to have landscaping in that area. He also, in the future, yep. And our Parks Director also was clear to remind me that we plant at least 1,000 trees a year in our parks and open spaces elsewhere in the city too. So
I was going to chime in on that one as well, Autumn. I know a few years ago we were working with groups downtown, and I know Downtown Issaquah Association is here this evening as well. And one of the conversations we had during the creation of the landscape concept plan for Old Town was about trees that may have lived beyond their lifespan and were not potentially as attractive or providing shade as we would hope, and that the plan is not to remove and not replace. The plan is to remove ones that aren't thriving and to replace. The ideal canopy would be one where the treetops are touching across the street, and we are creating shade as we can. So that's been sort of a change in direction, investing in those new trees, but it is hard when you see a big tree come out and a small tree go in.
And Nancy had another comment real quickly that said, the redevelopment of the single family duplex on Croston has significantly changed the character of the area. That's just a note to our discussion earlier.
I did not see that note. Did you have any other questions on other topics? I thought I saw something on truck
Yes. So Linda also asked about truck routes on Sunset. And so Linda, I included a link to some information, and she had a good follow-up question around, let's see here. My follow-up question would be the signs to instruct trucks of the approved truck routes. I did read in my research that it's the city's responsibility to install and maintain the direction signs of truck routes.
Yeah, that's a great follow-up question. We'll provide some more information on that and about enforcement as well. I don't have that on the tip of my tongue, but yeah. There was a significant discussion, I am guessing maybe 5 to 6 years ago, on our council about changing the classification of East Sunset Way and removing it as a truck route. And at that time, we were getting a significant amount of dump trucks and dual haul trucks. And so we have made the change, and many of the trucking companies have incorporated that change in their planning software. Some are still sneaking down once in a while. And so we really want to it's really not appropriate in the historical part of town. I think we probably should have removed its truck route designation decades before. But we'll get more information on the signage, and we'll get more information on enforcement.
That's all I have for my list of questions. There was one more comment about having trees downtown adds to its feel and flavor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we can see that in our parks planning. We see that in our streetscape plan for downtown. We love our trees. There's no doubt. Let's go then to our next presenter. Matt, you are up, and give us an update on the traffic calming in Old Town.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. Matt Ellis, Senior Engineer. And yeah, I'm providing a quick update on what we've been up to for traffic calming in Old Town, including some background, what we've heard from the community, and then our current plans. So just a quick background, I'm sure most people are aware, but we've received quite a bit of resident requests for traffic calming throughout the years. In 2018 through 2019, not 2029, we did a pilot program as well as some permanent improvements in Old Town, including speed bumps and a traffic circle within the neighborhood. We continue to evaluate the effectiveness of those, and we have received quite a few comments from residents about the continued need for more traffic calming within the neighborhood. After that, we've had a community meeting on the February 12th last year, and then a council meeting on the 25th. And since then, COVID hit. So some of the things that we had planned to do, including studying the neighborhood, we were unable to during COVID, but hopefully we can get some information here in the near future. So this slide just kind of shows some things that we've heard in the neighborhood. Extending school zones, people worried about speeding in the neighborhood, safety for pedestrians, especially kids trying to get to and from school, improved sidewalks, and then reducing speeds and congestion due to the school. One thing I want to address is that during the council meeting, or the open house we had last year, I provided a poster to some of the residents, and then they took that back and brainstormed some great ideas within the neighborhood, and I was unable to address that in the council meeting last year, but there was quite a few suggestions that people came up with. The suggestions that will follow here do not really address those. They were pretty big and grand, but one thing we are not going away. These are incremental approaches. That's kind of our goal here, is to kind of get some things in, hopefully see how they interact when school gets back in full swing, and then see if we need to do some more work. So yeah. So our proposed improvements, we have 3 things that we're proposing. One is street lights and crosswalk markings around the perimeter of Old Town, specifically south of Sunset and east of 2nd. So that includes 4th, 5th, and 6th Ave, or streets on Sunset, and then also Andrews and Bush. Second is improvements to the intersection of 2nd Avenue and Bush Street. And this includes some major rework of that intersection, because we've all seen that this is a major issue within the neighborhood. And then third is expanding school crosswalk signage throughout Old Town, in and around the schools. So first thing is street lights and crosswalk markings. This is just a picture of 5th and Sunset, a spot where we don't have any streetlights or crosswalks or crosswalk markings. So that's one of our goals, is to put streetlights at the corners here, just to highlight and provide some lighting for pedestrians who are trying to cross the street, especially when it gets dark here in the winter months, and then also provide a little more highlight with crosswalks. So again, providing crosswalks and stop bars at all major entrances into Old Town along Sunset, and then improve street lighting at 5 major entrances into Old Town. And here is just a map of where we're looking. Right now, there are crosswalks at Andrews and 2nd, as well as Bush and 2nd, but the lighting is inadequate. So we definitely want to improve that, so that I put some animation in here, but basically, yeah, so 2nd and Bush, Andrews and Bush, and all along Sunset is kind of our goal. And right now, we're doing survey on this and trying to do some utility locates. So our design is going, and we should have something completed soon that we can go out to construction. So the main thing we were worried about was how to get power to all these streetlights, and we're kind of working through that issue right now, as well as what impact we're going to have to existing infrastructure like sidewalks and things like that. So we're working through some of the details, but hopefully we can get this thing going soon. 2nd is 2nd and Bush, my favorite intersection. We definitely need to do some improvements here. Here's a picture during school, morning school rush. And obviously we need to do something to improve this. So our goal is to put some bulb outs in the neighborhood, in the intersection, narrow the streets to reduce the speeds, especially on 2nd Avenue, provide wider sidewalks and landings for pedestrians and kids to stand safely. We need to improve drainage, especially if we have bulb outs, to kind of make sure we don't have flooding over the sidewalks. I've noticed a few times that sidewalks are inundated right now. Improve street lighting, and then added signage. So here's a design that we've started to work on for the intersection. It does include street lights and much wider sidewalks than are currently there. Last summer, the school district provided us with a bus, and so we were able to drive through the intersection multiple times on their normal routes to see how a bus interacts with our proposed curb alignments, to make sure that we wouldn't install something that would impact or impede either buses or Eastside Fire and Rescue services. So this also kind of changed our design a bit. We were going to add a couple other elements, but it just didn't work with the buses. So this is kind of our plan. One element here that you may not see is a rapid flashing beacon. What we're proposing to do is install the infrastructure in place to put one in the future if need be. Right now, we're creating policy regarding the rapid flashing beacons that we see throughout town, to make sure we install them in the proper locations, and we don't put too many of them in. So we're really looking at making the policy about installing on 3-lane roadways and really heavy arterials. So, and situations where engineering judgment requires us to install one. So here's a spot where we don't have a 3-lane roadway. We do have some heavy traffic, especially in the mornings. So we want to evaluate how our improvements are impacting traffic and helping things out. And if we feel like we need to do more improvements, then the infrastructure is there. We can easily install, and we don't have to replace parts of the improvements that we just installed. So this is our incremental approach to improving the intersection, and hopefully we can make a positive improvement to the neighborhood. And then finally, school crosswalk signage. and this is the intersection of Darst and 2nd, and it does have a crosswalk sign, but we're going to replace these old crosswalk signs with the high fluorescent yellow school crosswalk signs, as well as warning signs leading up to the crosswalks. So next slide. So yeah, we're expanding the school crossing crosswalk signage all around the schools. We're replacing existing signs that aren't as reflective or aren't the school crossing signage. We're also installing new signs where there aren't any presently. And then we're also going to provide high visibility posts to make them very apparent to oncoming motorists. So here's kind of the location. Did a survey of all the intersections in and around the schools, and these are the highlighted locations are the places where we have lacking signage. So this includes Front and Bush, 2nd and Bush, along the Rainier Trail, right at the Clark Elementary School, Darst and 2nd, and then the trail crossing at Evans and 2nd. And one thing to note is that we did not include expanding the speed limit sign to 20 miles per hour beyond where it currently is. After consulting with the attorney, we were advised to keep it as is, but we can expand school crosswalk signage beyond that. So that's kind of our intention. One item that you might notice is that there's no signs in Old Town at all that we're proposing, and that we are proposing to do something. Those are over 1,000 feet from the nearest school, so we don't want to put crosswalk signage there. Also, the crossings are, we need to do some improvements, and they don't currently meet standards or the need to install striped crosswalks, but we want to do something in the neighborhood. And one thing we're thinking is purchasing a radar speed trailer that we could move around to different areas of the neighborhood. That way we can really monitor speeds, we can move it to where we have demand, and we can use it to kind of help identify if there is speeding and help slow people down on a one-on-one basis. So we're hoping that will really help the neighborhood and not just be one location, but we can just move it around and really see how it affects people. So those are the improvements that we're proposing right now. Any questions?
Yeah, it looks like you have a lot of questions.
Great.
So I'm going to let Autumn go through the chat and pull some stuff out for you.
Yeah, so the first, Linda made a comment that the crosswalk parking on East Sunset Way at 5th is scary, having trouble getting across that area. And there was a question of whether will there crosswalk lights be blinking at 5th and Sunset Way? And also, will there be blinking lights on the crosswalk of 2nd and Bush?
No, so those are the rapid beacons. And so right now we're proposing none on Sunset. There currently is one at the City Hall. But again, those are only our policy that we're looking at adopting would be more for 3-lane roadways and major arterials. But again, for 2nd and Bush, it's a unique location. We want to see how the improvements we install affect the neighborhood and affect traffic. And then if we do need to, we can install a beacon in the future. So we'll put in the infrastructure now, but we'll evaluate without putting the beacons actually in place, just because it does go against the policy that we're trying to adopt. But if engineering judgment does dictate that it is needed, we can install it at that location.
There was also a question with the new streetlights. Are they going to be the red ones that match the ones closer to Front Street? So that kind of Old Town look to the streetlights?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
I think that's dictated by our city standards, so it'll match.
Okay. Has there been thought of expanding the traffic softening efforts outside of Old Town to all of downtown? I live on Northwest Dogwood, and at times it competes with I-90 for speeds, since the street serves as a crossover from one side of the valley to the other. That was from Michael.
So we do have I'm going to put a plug in for our C-Click fix, which is, or I guess Autumn has a better term for that. But it's our way of monitoring what complaints people have or concerns within their neighborhood. So we have locations throughout town where people are concerned about traffic calming and things like that. So there is policy for us to, if residents are concerned for Dogwood, for example, put it in the request. We'll evaluate and see if it does require some traffic calming. We have locations throughout South Cove, up in the Highlands where people are have concerns.
Autumn, could you put the link to that from the website? Thank you.
Yes, I'll put it in the chat. And you also, it's on our homepage as one of the main buttons when you first enter the site, but I will include that in the chat. Let's see, the next one is Lesky. So wider corners at 2nd and Bush have been tried before with fairly major issues. Perceptions of the narrow intersection cause buses to cross over the center line. It also restricts turns by longer vehicles. The bulb outs were removed because they caused more problems than they solved. Test runs were done before, but still resulted in problems.
Okay. We'll continue to evaluate, but yeah, we did get a bus through there, and they seemed like it was adequate the way we had it designed. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to add into that too. This is the mayor. In the past, I'm not sure how well we did our coordination with the school district and their transportation department. And so this time it really made it a focus that your work tie in with the users of the road, which is a lot of bus drivers. So thank you for doing that. But we're also going to have to make sure that when this is constructed, we message to the school district to make sure the bus drivers are aware of the hazards it's caused if they do start to move over. So thank you for doing that.
And I know this question's come up a few times before. Is there any possibility of increased police enforcement of traffic laws throughout Old Town and the downtown area? That was from Betsy, and Michael said he seconded that question. Enforcement of speed limits and other traffic laws within the downtown area are in serious need of improvement.
Yeah, I think, Autumn, this is something that we need to go back to our public safety group and talk about. I know that one of the things that happened in last fall's budget was that we wanted to collect a lot more information on our police activities, police force, be able to let the public know what we're doing in terms of officer hours and tickets issued. So we have, the council did fund a couple of positions for data folks versus on the street police officers so that we can create a dashboard and get more information out. So I don't have the data currently, but we can make sure that the police chief and the traffic patrol division that he has provide some general answers now, but we should be able to provide data in the future and answer very directly the question.
All right, the next question is from Betsy. Will there be more parent drop-offs than usual once in-person schooling resumes because parents won't want to put their kids on buses? Could the city work with the school district to manage traffic during arrival and dismissal times?
Yeah, I love these crossover questions. Yes, we can. What we'll have to do is try to come up with some creative solutions, because I completely agree that there's going to be, we have hesitancy of all sorts right now. Hesitancy of some folks to do takeout food or dine outside. We have hesitancy about some folks' concerns over vaccines, and we'll have hesitancy about return to school. And so we'll definitely put this on our list. Our city administrator has a meeting with the superintendent, I can't remember the frequency, and see what we can do to manage this, because I agree this is a concern about having, thousands of cars more because of the concern about buses. And I'm not sure, maybe the school district has some information about even estimate or guesstimate of how many might be using the bus. But we will work with them. The bottom line, though, is that if the parents don't want to take the bus and put the kids in the car instead, it's going to be hard. It's understandable, but it's going to be hard. So we'll brainstorm a bit, see what we can do.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'll make sure that City Administrator Wallenbach sees that one too. There was a question, what's the timeline for the installation of the new streetlights on East Sunset Way?
That's a good question. I'm meeting with my consultant tomorrow to kind of talk about time frame and finalizing the design. So I don't have that answer yet, but I will put that in the website once we have more information.
Okay. Is it something it's targeted for this year?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
There's one other question. Let's see here. I think speeding is a problem in many parts of the city on Squawk Mountain Park Boulevard, a residential street with a 25-mile speed limit, has a real challenge with speeding, both going up and down. It's increasingly difficult and dangerous to get in and out of residents' driveways and side streets. I think that's another good candidate for our report a concern tool for engineering to look at.
Yes.
I think I've just covered everyone's question or statement.
Okay, so Autumn, can I just like throw a wrench in the works? The group is not quite as big as I thought. We had 70 people sign up. Would you be comfortable with me allowing the city staff to drop off the call and just letting the council members and I have a free flowing, take people off mute, let them ask questions about anything? Because we still have a lot of time if people want to stay around. It'd be like a mix and mingle afterwards. Okay, so staff that worked tonight, thank you so much for coming in, and managers as well as backup. Staff didn't need you tonight, but thank you guys for signing in. Feel free to drop off. And Autumn, if you can make it so that folks can unmute themselves, I might ask if our council members have any particular interest that you'd like to ask this neighborhood about, or we'll just see what the neighborhood wants to talk about. So has everybody got the ability to unmute themselves then if they want?
Yes, everyone can unmute. And Thomas, let's try pulling down the screen. Seeing this many panels sometimes.
I'd like to ask a question.
Go ahead.
Were there any type of building codes or rules in the Old Town neighborhood already previous to these?
Mitch, I don't know if it was just my earpiece, but were you asking if there were any rules prior to this?
Yeah, these new building codes that you're implementing for Old Town, were there previous codes for the Old Town area? I'm just curious because it seems like all of these new codes are designed to keep the character of the homes in the house, in the neighborhood, all looking a certain way, somewhat similar and fitting the neighborhood. And I was just wondering if that was something we had in place already, or that's all completely new.
Okay, all completely
Because
new.
I know in the past I put an addition on and had to get approval from neighbors and all.
Yeah, it's new. And it's sort of an add-on to the original process. So there may be some things when you're planning to do an addition where you still have to get approval from your neighbors if it has an impact on them. We did have standards for the commercial business district on Sunset and Front Street, and some multifamily standards as well, if it was multifamily housing. But residential was really on its own, and there were some surveys that were taken of Old Town, and I wouldn't say it's a consensus, but there were a lot of folks who wanted to see something, and it ranged anywhere from, can you just give us guidance on what we should do, to can you kind of put in something stricter so that we don't end up with nobody Italian here, but like a seaside villa from Italy showing up.
Well, I asked the question because I've lived in the neighborhood for 28 years, and I've seen a lot of new homes go up, and all of them seem to fit into the neighborhood pretty well, with the exception of one that went up recently. It's on the corner of First and Creekway, and it's very different and seemed very out of place to everything else in the neighborhood. So I was just wondering if there were codes in place before, or this is a completely new concept.
It's a new concept, and one of the primary reasons for it was there was a lot of concern about some of the three-story development that was going on in the neighborhood. And so I think the staff did a really good job going out to the community and taking the temperature of what they wanted, how strict they wanted it, did they want to limit it to different styles? So I think they did a really good job.
Yeah, I guess for now, I guess the past is unchangeable.
What's here, it's here.
What?
If it's here, it's here.
Apparently. Yeah, that one house is so out of character. It was just surprising that they allowed to build it in this neighborhood.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of community members who are happy to have new standards in place.
Yeah, okay.
Council members, it's your opportunity. Is there anything in particular that you would like to ask the Old Town neighborhood? You've been working on a bunch of things. Do you want to throw a question out there to get something going? I see Deputy Council President Ray is smiling.
I'm smiling. So the council president and I are meeting with school board leadership next week, and so along with the city administrator. So I would like to have some input on, if we could have a little more discussion about, what we should be bringing to the school board and the superintendent about how best to cohabitate in this part of the city. So I'd love to hear your thoughts so we can share them when we meet with them next week. Be gentle.
I have an idea, but I'll let someone else go first.
Mitch, feel free to jump in, throw your thoughts on the table, get other people going.
Well, all my kids went to all the schools there when it was Clark and the high school, and and I know what's going on there now. My observation is that the biggest challenge causing heavy traffic during school, obviously, if there's parents that need to drive their kids to school, they need to go there. I think the biggest challenge comes up with the number of students that drive to school and park there. And it seems that there's been more parking provided with new construction up there than less. And it seems that there could be an incentive program put in place to get kids not to drive to school and instead use the school bus. And if they put an incentive program in place of some sort to do that and not make so much parking available to the students, that would diminish a lot of traffic, because the biggest problems we've had over the years, I know for myself, a lot of kids used to cut down Alder Street. And I was almost in collisions multiple times with kids running stop signs there. Well, they don't go down Alder Street anymore, but they're still on Sunset. And I've driven out in the morning many times, and the cars are backed up to the freeway almost. And I can see they're all single occupancy students, which tells me that a very major part of that heavy traffic for school is because of the students that drive to school and park up there. So it seems that would be a big block to address and see if there's a way to incentivize them to not drive to school, not have parking available, so that it would minimize that.
Hey, Mitch, that's a great point. This is the mayor. Councilmember Ray, somebody didn't hear your question. Would you mind repeating it?
I would love to repeat the question.
You want me to repeat it, you said?
No, I'm going to repeat it. The question, not your comments, because they were great, Mitch. Thank you. I appreciate it a ton. The council president and I, along with the city administrator, are meeting with the school board leadership and school board superintendent next week. And I would love to have some of your views on how do we best coexist with the school and the city, so I can bring these issues up to the school board and to the superintendent next week. So the timing is absolutely perfect, since I know this is an issue of some significance to this neighborhood. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So thank you, Mitch. Is there anyone else who would like to help Council President with this conversation next week? It's really great that the two leaderships do get together, so chime in. Sure, go ahead. It says user, but can you introduce by your name? Robin, is it you? If it is, you're on mute. Still can't hear you.
Hi, Robin. It says that it might be your computer because it says you're not on mute. No.
She doesn't have her microphone on in her computer.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, Councilmember Ray.
Mayor Polly, I did see someone that joined us by phone is raising their hand. A
Great.
206 number with the last two digits are 14. So you hit *3 if you're joining us by phone with a question. That will unmute you.
Can you tell Autumn if they're unmuted to call in?
They're still on mute.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Well, I'm going to suggest that Robin type her question or comment into the chat box, and we'll get to it. And is there anyone else who wants to provide some feedback for Councilmember Ray?
She may be able to unmute herself by pushing the space bar.
Linda, while Robin's trying, do you want to go ahead? So Autumn, I can't hear Linda either, and it doesn't look like she's muted.
Well, that's not good.
Yeah.
Linda, it says you're not muted.
Ah, the joy of online meetings.
I think this is Robin, though, that just typed in at a transportation roundtable, the youth participants were giving feedback about the citizens using transit and carpooling. It was suggested that students also support these efforts.
Thank you, Robin. So Councilmember Ray, that's another thought about.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and I think that we rely heavily on our youth, and we have some very, very smart youth in this community, and engaging them in how to solve the problem, how to define the problem, I think is a really clever way to go. This, by the way, is my administrative assistant, Johnny. He never misses a meeting. You will see his tail in many council meetings.
How about?
Let's go back and try Linda again.
Oh, looks like I have success.
I think you do.
So, thank you. I wanted to comment on the traffic around the schools. When we, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, when the Issaquah Hobart Road was, unfortunately closed for 24 hours, it was like a quiet Sunday morning at 8 o'clock around here. I'm on Sunday 5th. And I just wanted to say that, well, we have a lot of school traffic. I've seen that happen. That's crazy. But mix that in with all the traffic that's coming back and forth to 90 for commuters at the same time. That's where we get things really convoluted with the traffic, because you see, I mean, it was like a Sunday morning at 8 a.m. and Sunday afternoon at 5 when there was no traffic on Tuesday. I think it was a Tuesday, and it was all because the Issaquah Hobart Road was closed. So I think there's more impact coming out of the southern part of our area than maybe we're giving credit to, and that will have a big impact on that traffic that's during the school times, besides all of our teenagers that want to drive to school.
Linda, what street are you on?
I'm at 275 East Sunset Way.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's both. We have a pass through for people to get to work, and then we also have a community that has a lot of high school students with cars, but also a lot of parents who want to drop their kids off before they go to work.
Yeah.
So it is
what school doesn't have that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I'm working on in a regional sense is I'm trying to work with the cities that are south and east of us to get funding from the state to complete Highway 18. If Highway 18 was a 4-lane lit divided highway, it would be able to carry a significant capacity in a shorter amount of time. And so that project has been discussed for over 25 years. And so we're working with the legislature right now, and so far there's an earmark in there for 500 million. I don't know if it's actually going to make it through, but I really believe that could help us a ton with passenger traffic, and also help those who are coming from the south get to I-90. I mean, the reason they come through is, that piece of highway is one of the most dangerous sections that we have in the state. So
my neighbors have mentioned the same thing, that if 18 got fixed, we would see less of that commuter traffic coming in and out through Sunset off of 90. Right up there.
I think that's been a problem that we all are aware of for quite a while, and praying the state would do something before we all die. But my observation is, while that creates a total traffic jam through the city every day during rush hours, there's a lot less people who choose to use Second Avenue because of that, because of the lower speed limit during school hours. And so while it might contribute a tiny bit, I still believe the biggest challenge with congestion there is the people traveling directly to and from the schools.
I think when we bring back any of our intersection improvement areas, we'll make sure that they have some traffic data for you all as well.
It would be really interesting to have Public Works do some modeling too. Because it would be good to have some data to speak to this from.
Yeah, I agree. We have done, I don't believe we have it now, but we have modeling of the school bell start times, but we also have data from Issaquah Hobart Road as well in terms of the volumes of springtime.
It would be interesting to have a count of vehicles using Second Avenue as a bypass versus a destination route. I believe you'd find that the destination route is the heaviest use during those rush hours to school.
Yeah,
the traffic's most congested.
I think that's a great point. I'm going to pop over to Councilmember DeMichelle, a long-term Old Town resident herself, and see if there's anything you want to throw on the table to let people chew on.
Thanks. I think, and I'm really enjoying the conversation, and I'm really enjoying listening to what the concerns are. I think my question would be, what can the city do for you next in Old Town? And I have heard comments about sidewalk repair, road repair, noise. So if people want to say, here's my biggest concern, or this is what I'd like the city to do next, I think that would be something we'd all like to hear.
Oops, Nancy, you had a question?
Sorry, I had to unmute. I'm interested in what the council and the city is doing about the homeless population in the downtown area. As a frequent user of the park at the end of Bush Street, I know there are people that live there. I see them every other day when I'm walking down through there, and I don't know what our policy is and how we're addressing it. I see people sleeping in front of the community center and various city buildings. And is that just something we're allowing to happen now? And we're going to see what's happening in other communities move to Issaquah.
That's a great question. So for follow-up, I'll give a short answer today. Autumn, we should be able to share the clip from the last council study session. I think Monica provided a pretty good, council just had a conversation about this as well. There is what was about 5 years ago and what is happening right now. So what was the city has a bunch of ordinances that talk about urban camping, all that. And there was some case law in other states that is so far trying to make sure that cities haven't created ordinance that make it being poor or out on the street criminal. So a lot of ordinances that are on the book, if you were to go onto our do a search yourself, you'd find some ordinances that you would say that's surprising because it's different than what I see on the street. So we've had to adjust at this point in time until there's some sort of version of settled law. We have some human services folks on our staff, but we have supported a new homeless outreach person who is working out of the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank. And our approach has been this. If folks notify somebody living outside, we ask them to use the same notification tool that we have. You can either use the police non-emergency number, or you can notify us and drop a picture in or whatever you want and just say, this is concerning. I see somebody sleeping outside. Our officers will go and approach the individual, and they tell them it's not legal to be, this is not a place that you can sleep. This is not a place that you can set up your tent. You have 72 hours to relocate. How can we help you? And try to provide an opportunity to connect them with services. Now that the new homeless outreach coordinator has started at the food bank, we're able to pair him up with the officers. So this is a new step for us and the community in trying to take it one step further. Mike will also work with them to try and connect them with services. It may be that they just need a few nights stay at a hotel that one of our nonprofits pays for in order to be able to reconnect with family or friends or with services that they need. So sometimes the community is frustrated when they send something in and they notice that the person is still there the next day or maybe the next day. But we actually give them 72 hours to try and work something out. And that's where we are right now. So I think one of the issues that's been really hard during COVID is most shelters are closed. And so folks that used to use shelters as their place to go to at night have not been able to do that. And so not only have folks noticed it in Issaquah, they've noticed it in almost every single city in our Puget Sound region. So it's a big issue. I think when we are able to reoccupy shelters, I think that will be helpful, but there also needs to be an investment made in not only shelter space, but mental health services and drug addiction services. So one thing we find is when we reach out to people, sometimes we don't have capacity in our local public health system in order to get them services. Does that answer your question, Nancy?
It does, and I'm going to ask a follow-on onto that, Mayor.
Sure.
What about the RVs that we're seeing parked for extended periods of times in various areas in downtown?
It's the same with the RVs. Right now we have an ordinance on the books that says you can't park for more than 24 hours, and that is deemed unenforceable. And so same thing, if there are RVs parked over a period of time on public property, notifying us through the police non-emergency number or notifying us through the submit a request tool is what we have. Thanks.
May I ask a quick follow-up to that?
Sure.
Since you said the goal is to give them 72 hours, what do we do to get them to move on after 72 hours if they haven't taken advantage of any of the opportunities offered to them so that we still maintain a safe downtown for those of us paying taxes to live here?
That's a great question. I think I'm going to get Autumn to do a follow-up from Matt, our outreach coordinator, and the police. The cases that I've been involved with, all I've known is they're not there 3 days later. I don't know what happens on that third day. So I'll have to get you some information.
Thank you.
And back to Councilmember DeMichel's question. Barb, you wanted to know what was top of mind for folks. Anybody else want to join in on that?
What was that question?
I just want to make sure that for all the residents that have signed on, if anybody else wants to provide some more information for Councilmember DeMichel, her question was, besides what we've talked about, what else is top of mind for you? And homelessness came up.
I have one. I'm talkative tonight. It's a pet peeve in our neighborhood. Numerous times over the 28 years I've lived here, the subject of turning the 3rd Avenue Bridge into a road that cars can drive across has come up, and the neighborhood has fought vehemently against it because it would basically ruin the neighborhood and in the end give no advantage. So I wanted to know if there's a commitment by the city to not approach that particular item again.
That's a good question. I'll give you a general answer and then I'll let the council members weigh in. Our city is interesting in that it is constrained by hillsides creeks, all kinds of things. And so we have a lot of streets that dead end, and in some cases we have these great little pedestrian bridges that cross over. There was a point in time, I think, my opinion, that the focus was on movements of cars. And therefore, let's look at our grid and see how we can connect it. And I think the last time this came up might have been 5 or 6 years ago. As the conversations have evolved on transportation over the last many years, there is a movement or there is a theme of trying to focus on other ways to get around beside cars, and sort of a celebration of these small bridges, especially when they provide pedestrian and bicycle connections between neighborhoods. So I'm not sure, in my opinion, if there is still a focus on trying to connect all these little street grid items, but I'll throw it out to the council members to weigh in. And Councilmember Goodman, we haven't heard from you yet, so if you have any thoughts on that.
Sure, thanks. I was hoping for this opportunity. First of all, this is a great conversation. I have the same question that Councilmember DiMichele had posed, and that was, what's important to you right now? What's your number one issue? Even if it's been talked about tonight, it's interesting to know what the different folks in the community in this neighborhood think is important to them and want us to know about. But as far as the 3rd Avenue Bridge goes, you're correct. That's been an issue, for 3+ decades, and every time it percolates towards the surface, there's a big community conversation. And the mayor is right that there isn't a focus on that right now for a lot of reasons. But second of all, and I would ask if someone in our development department could confirm, but I believe several years ago, or 6 maybe years ago, we may have removed that project from one of our lists, because every time that list popped up, it might have been the transportation improvement plan, every time that list popped up and that for us to revise at the council level, it became an issue because it was still on that list. I believe it's been removed from that list. That does not mean that it's not ever possible for a future council to consider that policy question again. But I believe it's no longer on the list, which means it would be probably a pretty big effort in order to get it back on that list to be even considered as a project. That's my recollection of what happened and why it's not a sort of a constant issue any longer.
Yeah, we'll confirm that. Sorry, we will confirm that in our follow-up, but I believe that sounds very familiar to me as well. Any other thoughts?
I appreciate that feedback because it's been a big issue for us, and it really, it literally would ruin this entire Old Town neighborhood here. In so many ways I won't get into, but I'm glad to hear it's off the list, and I hope it doesn't get considered again ever.
I believe it's off the list. I'm not saying 100% sure, but I think that's what we did several years ago.
Yeah, we'll confirm that. Thank you, Councilmember Goodman. Before I go
Thank
to
you.
Councilmember DiMichele, I did want to emphasize as well that the space on the valley floor has decreased the opportunities for the public over the many decades, and now it's kind of a treasure to have space down there. I know at some future point in time on the other side of the 3rd Avenue Bridge, a gentleman who's currently living on those properties has deeded them to the city for a future park. And there is a lot of extra space on that piece of Gilman Boulevard by Bones Chocolate. It used to be a former highway right-of-way. And again, some creative thought of how to potentially remove lanes over there and convert it into some sort of linear park or other public amenity. I think that's more top of mind for the council that we have now, is how do we reclaim these pieces for the public versus how do we widen and add lanes. Anyway, just a couple thoughts.
Are you referencing Richard's property there on the north side of the 3rd Avenue Bridge?
It's not
The real huge lot just on the west side of the street as you come off the bridge.
Okay, why am I blanking on his name? I'll think of his
Is it
name in
Cora?
a second.
Is it Cora? Is it Cora? Yeah.
Oh, Cora?
Yeah.
And Councilmember DiMichele.
I'll just add, early on when shortly after I moved to Issaquah, and I was working for the Issaquah School District as a contractor for a number of years. And I actually had an office there on a third that I was sharing with a friend. We shared the office, and I love that area. I love that little bridge. I take my grandchildren there for picnics and just cherish it. So no, speaking just as a single council member, I have no interest in putting a highway through there. I love that area. Thanks.
And Council Member Ray, did you have some comments you wanted to throw in?
Yeah, I think it makes absolutely no sense to do that. So I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, if ever.
And we do have Brad Brook on, who's on our Parks Board. And I don't know if Brad knows more than I do about that corner Cora Park, or has any thoughts on Gilman Boulevard itself, which I think could be converted into something amazing. But Brad, did you have any thoughts on that?
There are no things in the hopper on those two areas that we've had in discussion about, or work plans or anything to my knowledge. I do have kind of a question for maybe council members, though.
Sure.
I don't know if it's somebody here. And I don't keep up on all the meetings like I probably could or should. So I suppose this is all sitting somewhere in space in terms of what's going on. But this is a good opportunity to kind of get some clarity about parking. Is there any, if somebody could maybe talk a little bit about what the short and maybe longer term strategy discussions are about parking in downtown or in Old Town, and also whether or not there's any talk about maybe converting some of the existing Front Street parking more permanently to be a part of restaurants or outdoor sitting, long term.
So let's call that some visioning. Okay, 3 council members, what do you think about parking and a few more amenities downtown? Let's go to Councilmember DeMichelle.
Thanks. I go to what Mayor Polly said earlier. We are really focused on seeing what we can do to get alternate forms of transportation. And so I think that's where my focus has certainly been when I ran for the council, and the COVID has really turned some of our transit options and Metro's planning topsy-turvy. So we're just going to have to wait for a little bit to see how that settles out before we can start moving forward again. But my interest is in helping the community find alternate ways of getting around besides cars. And so that has been my focus. And I think it is the long-term, in my view, it is the long-term solution that ultimately we're going to have to look at, is how do we move people more efficiently with less environmental impact. And so that would be my response. So
Barb, you live downtown, so the whole parking thing to you is kind of like it is to me. I don't need the spots. So you could use it for whatever you want, but there is a perception that there's a shortage. So I'm going to ask Councilmember Ray, who I've met downtown, he's had to drive. What do you think about parking, and what do you think about converting some of the Front Street spots?
So I agree with Barb on, we need to look for alternative ways of people getting around. Unfortunately, we have a bunch of hills in this town, which makes some active transportation modes kind of difficult for those of us who live in the Highlands or in Tallis or in Squawk, to walk or to bike or what have you. So I think we're going to need parking, because otherwise we're going to have a very limited catchment area for our downtown businesses. That being said, I would like to find a way that we could push our sidewalks out, and maybe that means taking up our parking spaces on Front Street to create more of a promenade there, and kind of a little more European feel, I guess. And then Finally, I am struck, that you own a car or you own two cars, and 95% of the day they sit parked. They're not an active thing. And so maybe the answer is more around vehicle sharing and ride sharing and things of that nature that I think are pretty underutilized right now, particularly from a public perspective. So it's interesting. So I sit on the King County Growth Management Planning Council, and we're working on the countywide plans for the next several years. And we're talking about the transportation element last week, so it's top of mind for me. And it's this is not just an Issaquah problem. This is a countywide. This is a region-wide concern. So Brad, I know I danced around your question really well, but I think it requires some more study, and we've done some parking studies, and it's a balancing act between how much space do you decommission, but still provide adequate space that people are attracted to come down to the merchants that are in downtown.
Yeah, I think a lot of my focus or vision is probably more about the future than the present in terms of, as we develop Old Town, as we develop the Issaquah Creek corridor and some of our park amenities. I see a draw for more people from the region coming into the area. And it's not so much about, what's available now as what's going to be available in the future. Is there any discussion about a parking garage, having something more centrally located, to help keep some of the pressure off Front Street, a way for people to find parking, is also something I know that's been up for discussion.
Yep.
And a future. I'm looking 5-10 years from now when I kind of bring up this question is now's the time to plant the seeds for future parking, to address that, because going to be a lot more impact in the future, and now is the time to talk about where all those people are going to go with their cars.
That is great, Brad. I have a few thoughts, but I want to make sure Councilmember Goodman gets to weigh in as well on this one. Councilmember Goodman?
Thank you. So I'm turning my head here because I'm looking at another screen because I thought we had downtown streetscape plan, and that plan encompassed some of the things that we've talked about here in terms of what the street would look like. And it was part of a community effort that took a couple of years, and it envisions, how the streets would, it's one of the reasons that a lot of the trees came out 3 or 4 years ago. And so there's some, that plan includes putting those trees back, some trees back in, and it also has some cross sections of streets. So I don't know, maybe I can put it in the chat here. Yeah, but I just very generally, I don't know what I can. Okay, maybe I couldn't see it. So support things that are, creative solutions, and some of the things that we've talked about, parking issues, whether we have enough parking, and how to be creative about it have just been issues that we've talked about for 25 and 30 years. The parking garage was something that we've talked about many times. One of the issues we have is regarding parking. We've done several studies over the last 25 years, and the interesting thing about Issaquah is that we appear to have enough parking spaces within a few blocks of downtown, but when you live in a city where your downtown is small, and you have to walk a couple of 3 blocks, it feels like you're walking a long way, as opposed to being in downtown where you would walk. You don't expect that you're going to be able to park within a couple of blocks of your destination. And so we talked about signage that would help direct people to where more public parking is. I also think that there's an issue that will have to be addressed as hopefully more people take transit, is what do we do with the cars that are taking up the spots for public parking when they want to park all day and take the bus, which is a good thing. They're taking transit. but they're parking downtown. And then we also have our public, our government agency buildings downtown, and folks have to park. So anyway, we have a streetscape plan. All the issues that everybody's bringing up are long time issues that need to be addressed. And I love creative solutions. But anyway, so here's the link to the downtown streetscape plan. And then if you have any questions, it's full of a lot of pictures. It's kind of an easy document to read. So I think you should feel free to, if you look at that document, have any questions, please email us. We are very accessible. Our cell phones and our emails are on the website. And so those are kind of my rambling thoughts, because I was looking on the website to find the streetscapes plan, because we do have one.
I think the other thing that I wanted to point out is that part of making these investments in the Old Town area is not just for the benefit of commercial, it's to create a vibrant neighborhood in Old Town.
Yeah.
So we want the residents to say what they think will work and what they think they would like. And I think, Brad, you're right. Success down there will mean more customers, for one thing. So that's what will add the vibrancy and the character. Just an example, just to plant a seed. I don't know how it's possible, but I see a couple of opportunities. I don't think parking garages in the center of an area of interest are a great idea. I do think people have to walk 3 blocks to get to something. I wouldn't want to take up prime real estate where you could have a couple more cafes or restaurants with a parking garage. But if somebody is going to build at the 4 corners down there and go a couple of stories, there's probably an opportunity to get a little more parking within a private development. But we also aren't very good at sharing. There's a lot of private parking there right now. And so a business may have 5 or 6 dedicated on their property spots, and their business closes at 5 and nobody gets to park in them. So I think kind of coming together and identifying those shared private spaces and finding a way, either the city provides an incentive with a reduction in business and operating tax or something. I look at the Lazy Boy furniture store and boy, wouldn't I want the first 3 rows of parking there? What can I give him to let me sign that as public parking? It's literally 2 blocks away from everything you'd want to go to. So I think there may be some new construction, but I think there should be some repurposing that goes on. And that would be a kind of a council consideration of what would they want to put on the table to trade. So that it's kind of like when people talk about continuous use of a space where there's something going on during the day for work and then something else takes over at night, and then really activating something. And so I think it's going to be great. That's a good question. We are at our time, and this is probably the most fun I've ever had on an online meeting before, because we actually got to listen, get some questions and get some input. So this was really great. But I don't want to make you feel like if you think of something tonight, there's no easy place to go. So Autumn, if folks have additional questions, they think about what they heard tonight and want to ask more, what email address would you suggest they send those to?
Yeah, send them to communications@issaquah.gov, and we'll
okay, if you could put that in the chat, that would be great. We're also going to, there was at least a half a dozen items that came up tonight that need some sort of follow-up. So we will make sure to send that back out. The other thing I kind of would like the Old Town neighborhood to think about, because it is not a formally structured HOA type of neighborhood, which is good. One of the reasons I like it down here is the timing of these meetings really should be to fit in with the community's desire. So we set this one up on a schedule that we think works. But if you have any suggestions about how we can help create some of that community fabric to get more voices together, more voices in the conversation, let us know, because we have some neighborhoods that are very organized HOAs, and they pick the date they want us on the calendar every year, and we go and show up. And then we have other ones that are, you get whoever comes up. So we're open to ideas of how you think we could reach more folks in Old Town, and how we could come and do these kinds of conversations and presentations on your schedule when you're interested in it, at the time it works for you all. So So that's it. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to thank Autumn and her staff and the others that gave their presentations this evening, and also the council members. It's awesome when council members come to these community meetings. I love it. So we are trying to do these all around town, and this was really fun tonight doing the Old Town one in the neighborhood. So thank you all for coming.
Thanks for taking your evening to come talk to us. We really appreciate it.
We do. Thanks all.